Welcome to Stand By Please.
With me, Antonia Collins from the Bamboo Manager Project.
And me, Jackie George from Sharjah Performing Arts Academy.
In this podcast, we talk all things stage management. Join us and our guests as we try to answer the question, what is your stage manager really thinking?
Hello, Antonia. How lovely to see you. It feels like it's been ages since we last spoke.
I know. It isn't really ages since we last spoke, I don't think. But I think we just had quite a lot of life that's been in the way, just in the same way that it would in any year, actually. It's probably been the most normal part of my 2020 is actually having Christmas and seeing very, very close family, because we were only allowed to have certain people to come and visit here in Wales. But actually, it was quiet but lovely.
That's good to hear. I especially love this time between Christmas and the New Year because Twixmas, as some people call it, it's full of anticipation and what could happen and possibility. And I think more so than ever, we are all ready for the sort of the prospect of possibility and what next year could bring.
Well, it's the second time in an entire year that you kind of get the restart, isn't it? Because I always think that for me, the anticipation of the going back to school season in August, September is the first restart of, and then at Christmas you get another shot at it. So you can look at, I love that whole thing with your diary and transferring people's birthdays on the calendar. We still have a real calendar, though this year we've broken the trend. For the last 10 years or so, we've had a Cliff Richard calendar.
Ooh.
I'm not really sure why. It started out as a joke. And then became a thing. And I was like, okay, we got to step away from Cliff this year. So this year I've made a calendar on one of those websites that you can use lots of different, you can put your own photos in it. So I've done that. But I love all of that. I love the setting out of things and the putting your life in order thing. And New Year gives you an opportunity to do that, doesn't it?
I know exactly what you mean. I was thinking exactly the same. I was like, I'm so lucky because you do get two starts at a new year. You get sort of the September and then you get the January as well. But yeah, we did the whole calendar thing today. I must admit, I'm slightly taken back by the Cliff Richard. Who's the fan? I want to know.
No, it was Joe. So it was our younger son who started it. It was clearly a joke. But he asked my mother-in-law to buy him a Cliff Richard calendar for Christmas as a joke, and she did.
Fabulous.
And then we never lost it. We never lost Cliff. He's been omnipresent in our lives, but he's not going to be present in 2021. Oh. I was like, okay, I can't do Cliff any longer. But
Cliff.
Yeah, no, I know. Cliff is no more in our household. But I tell you what, yesterday, so day before New Year's Eve, it's funny, isn't it? This kind of hiatus in between Christmas and New Year thing. And I was like, right, I'm going to have a little tidy up because I feel like I could have a tidy up. So I did two things yesterday, one slightly more serious than the other. The first thing I tidied up was my travel wash bag, which I have not used at all in 2020. But I thought I saw it in the drawer and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to get that out. I'm going to wash it all out inside. I'm going to wash all the little pots that I use to decant things in. And I'm going to put it away so it's ready to use in 2021. There's optimism for you, isn't it? I was like, come on.
I think that's really important. I think absolutely that's what a new year is about. It's all about what could happen. We were literally talking before, weren't we, about, you don't know what's going to happen. And that thought I really enjoy. And I think you have to be open. You have to be ready to let come in what's going to hit you. Because I read, I can't remember who it was by, but it was a brilliant quote about fear. And it says, if fear stops you from doing things, then fear is going to stop you from achieving. And I was like, oh yeah, this is it. You have to be ready for those differences and those challenges. So I'm ready. Bring it on. I must admit, our calendar this year is Rebel Girls. So Mabley's really excited about that. All the different women. We've got a ballerina as our first one. Her name escapes me, January, but it's a great calendar.
I thought you were going to use the tell me about the Simon Sinek quote, that where he says, that you have to have optimism. Without optimism that life will improve and things will get better, I can't remember exactly what the quote is, but it was sat around, hope and optimism. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, and I was talking to two of my closest friends this morning, and I said to them, think back to New Year's Eve 2010 and how much we've all done since then. And, the exciting things that we've done since then. In 2010, I had no clue that I was going to go to Asia. I had no clue that I was going to go to America. You had no clue that you were going to go to Sharjah. You just don't know. You just don't know what's around the corner. And I think for me, that's the thing that's kept me going this year is hope. Oh God, I sound like an episode of Star Wars.
Well, I was sort of Oprah Winfrey. That's where I was going, but I love it. No, I completely agree with you. And I've always been more so, I've realised this year, I've always been glass half full. And I'll always look for the positive, because otherwise that optimism, that hope, how are you going to go forward? Like you said, 2010, I was freelance stage manager living in London. I've made 2 major moves since then. So I didn't know I was going to go back to South Wales, didn't know I was going to come out to the Middle East. But, you've just got to be open and full of hope and full of optimism for what could happen, isn't it?
I did a podcast last week. It's a very long podcast called Twins Talk. And as I was talking, one of the things that came out was the fact that I mainly say yes to things. And I think that's part of my kind of glass half full hope, optimism. And, I think that is a very stage management like trait, I suspect, is that you think, well, what's the worst that could happen? Let's say yes to doing that job, or yes to doing that contract, or yes to even having a conversation with somebody. And I am one of those people that believes our life is fundamentally mapped out for us. But every connection is a connection to somebody else and somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And it might not be the first person that you connect to that actually is going to provide this opportunity for you, but it might be the second or third person. You just don't know. So if you approach everything in a kind of hopeful heart, if you like, then I think, for me, that's been part and parcel of my life. I mean, I think occasionally I should learn to say no. That would also have been useful at times. But sometimes you've got to be brave. And that's part of living an adventure. There's a quote, it's on a wall in London, and it says something like, it basically says, you can do the same thing every day, but it's boring. And adventure is out there, and I think I'm a bit of a, we talked about it before, didn't we? A bucket list junkie, or whatever the phrase was. What did we talk about before, Jackie?
It was that. It's that sliding doors moment, isn't it? I mean, I love that film. It's quite a few years old now, but it is that sliding doors moment. Like, not that I'm one to think, oh, what if I'd done that instead of this? I always think, well, if I don't do it, what's going to happen? So you throw yourself into it. And I think it's fantastic that the routes that things can take you. So if it's one thing I wish for all my family and friends for 2021 is to have everything come at them much better than it has been in 2020. What about 2020, Antonia? Let's stay with the glass half full theme. What are you most grateful for 2020?
Well, I think I should, say I'm very grateful for my husband, because
He is a legend.
He is a legend, and he does a sterling job at looking after me and making sure that I get fed and watered, and that I've always got clean clothes. That's very important. Freshly ironed. And yeah, just basically, he's always been an amazing support, but this year has been challenging. I like traveling, I like meeting new people, I like working away, and there hasn't been any of that in 2020. So I think that's really important, actually, is that we've stayed together. Well, not stayed together, I don't mean that, that's terrible. I mean that we've managed, we've been in a different phase of our relationship, and that's what relationships are like, aren't they? They go in phases, and we've been in a different phase where we've been together a lot, way more than normal, because either I would have been away or Andy would have been away, and we'd literally have somewhere to go to, because you'd be leaving your home to go to work. We haven't left. We've just been here, but we're doing all right, we're fine. I think one of the things I've really discovered this year has been podcasts. And not only ours, and no doubt we'll talk about that because that's been a special joy, but other people's. I'd liked a podcast before. It'd been one of those things where I would have said, oh yes, I like a podcast, but I hadn't really listened to that many. Listened to Oprah Winfrey and Mary Portas. I loved her podcast. But I've listened to a lot of news on podcasts, because there's so... I feel like the news that we get to watch on the TV is a bit news light. Do you know what I mean? And I was a bit like, no, I'd like some more depth and some detail. And actually, that kind of news has come via some of the podcasts that I've been listening to. I'm especially grateful for the American election. That was a great distraction.
Yeah.
I don't think the Americans quite feel about it in the same way, but for us not in America, watching the election play out has been incredible, actually, and has been a joyous distraction from the rest of the coronavirus news, in essence. And I'm very excited to see Joe Biden become president. And I'm very intrigued to see who will be at his inauguration and who won't. But yeah, so thank you, America. That has been a great joy in 2020. I understand, not necessarily for you, but it has been for me. What about you, Jackie? What have you been grateful for in 2020?
Do you know, there's quite a few things. First and foremost, absolutely family. I think it's given me an opportunity to spend time with my family that's been completely outside of the norm. And I don't think we'll get that chance again. I've been really grateful, no matter what we think about e-learning or distance learning, how difficult it can be at times. I was extremely grateful for being able to watch my daughter learn. Because I would never get that opportunity. I don't get to sit in the classroom with her. I don't get her to see how she interacts with her teacher. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful to know that family connection that we have is strong enough. I think, we should all pat ourselves on the back. Like you said, we've been able to switch situations where we go out to work, go to school, we'd have our routine, and that was flipped. And we actually kind of thrived in that situation. So I'm grateful for that. Maybe on a more flippant level, I was thinking the other day, I thought, well, that's one thing I'm grateful for. I was wearing a mask and something or someone had annoyed me, and because I had my sunglasses on and had a mask on, I thought, well, they can't see my expression. So I was grateful for masks, as well as protecting me from the virus. It also hides my sometimes too clear facial expressions.
That's hysterical. That is absolutely, because I'm grateful for masks because of the job they're doing, but I am very conscious of the fact that a lot of the time I smile at people and that's part of my persona. Do you know what I mean? That's part of my life, not just my work life, but my life. And of course, it's much harder to smile with only your eyes available, isn't it? You know, I'm getting better at it. But I often joke that I've made a career out of smiling at people, and then you're like, oh, I can't do that anymore. That's kind of a slightly weird one, isn't it? But yes, I'm grateful for what masks are doing for us. That's a totally different thing.
Definitely. And so many other things. I'm grateful for, despite, and I've always checked myself, maybe this is getting onto a slightly more serious note, but I've always checked myself this year, because I absolutely appreciate, I'm talking from a very privileged position in that we have food on the table, we're all safe, my family are well, but I'm grateful for the fact that theatre people are resilient, and no matter what shape it comes back in, I have every faith in our theatre community that despite how unlooked after they have been or may feel, that there will be a new life and a new beginning for that. And I wish everyone for the new year to keep resilient and to keep showing their resilience. I think the resilience that's been shown from sort of friends and colleagues in the last year has been incredible. And actually, from watching from the outside, has been quite inspiring. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that would be one of the things I was grateful for this year, was the way that our community have supported one another. I mean, it was ironic, wasn't it, that our American colleagues had decided to declare 2020 the year of the stage manager.
Yes.
For a variety of reasons. But, you know, and then 2020 turned into, oh my goodness, this was not what we were expecting. You know, I think there were all those key moments, weren't they, like when Broadway shut down, you know, and we were like, oh wow, okay, this is serious now. But the way in which we've been able to build that community this year has been incredible, and the way that people have supported one another and, you know, different initiatives. You know, I feel exactly the same way as you. You know, I'm in the same situation. You know, I'm white. I'm come from my parents would say working class background, though I think most people would say a middle class background. And, you know, I have not suffered from racism in the way that a lot of our friends and colleagues have. And I think this year has been a really great year of learning and reflecting and thinking about some of those things in a great community. That's the only way I can describe it. I can't think of a better word than community, really. And, you know, we've been able to do some really amazing things online and come together and connect in a way that we wouldn't have done normally. You know, I went to a conference in America from my own bedroom, which was incredible. And I think one of the things that I really love about it is the way that we've been able to include a lot of the younger stage managers, either those who are just starting out on their stage management journey, or those who are, you know, maybe not even at the starting point, because they've been able to come in the Facebook groups, ask our opinions about which drama school they should be considering, or should they be considering drama school, or interviews, you know, all of those things. And we've been able to scoop them up in a way that actually we never did before. Not at all. I think a lot of those groups were probably quite closed off to people who weren't already a stage manager. You know, obviously we belong to some, but we've been able to scoop them up in a different way. One of the things I've been really grateful for this year was the Stage Management Association tea break on a Friday morning. We've had this national tea break at 11 a.m. on a Friday morning. And I didn't really get into them until later on in the year. And then I took them over for a few weeks while Ali Wade, who normally runs them, was actually working on a real job. But, you know, you get such a diverse group of people. You've got stage managers who, I don't want to be rude, but I'm suggesting possibly are in their 70s, through to, you know, students who are in drama school. And that connection would have never happened under normal circumstances.
That
Never, ever would that have happened.
That is so true. And I was just thinking back to actually one thing I was so actually made my heart swell a little bit was when we started the Wales Stage Management Association network, whatever we called it, can't remember. That's not important. But it was about, because as stage managers, we work as a CSM, you'd work with a number of DSMs or ASMs, but you'd never work with another stage manager or CSM, and you'd lose out on those opportunities to talk and to support each other. And, it happens for a while, but finding the day for everyone to meet and all that sort of stuff. But seeing that flourish actually during lockdown made me so happy, and seeing those people connect. And another note of connection, I am so grateful for doing this podcast with you. This would not have happened outside of the 2020 setup that we were in. And it's been fabulous just to reconnect with you, just to talk, just to hear different voices, different thoughts, same voices. So that's been really, I'm so grateful for that as well.
Yeah, me too. Somebody said to me the other week, how did that start? And I was like, do you know what? I didn't really remember, because you and I had worked together, and then we'd always kept in touch, hadn't we?
Yeah.
And stuff. But then I think maybe I emailed you or you emailed me, and we were like, hey, let's do a podcast, So just like, see, that's not thinking, that's just going for it. That's literally like, what's the worst that could happen?
That is so true. Because we had our first catch up about it. We talked about it, and we were like, oh, so how do you do that then? And we were like, so stage manager about it. We were like, right, Antonia, you go off and do this. I'll go off and research that. We'll look at how that works, and then we'll come back. And then it just gathered speed, didn't it? And before you knew it, we were like planning, who are we going to speak to next? What should we talk about? And we had this wealth of material. It was beautiful.
Well, and just the feedback, it's lovely, isn't it? I've had so many messages and emails from people, some of whom I knew and some of whom I didn't know. We've certainly educated people, Jackie, who didn't know anything about stage management, who have ended up listening because they know one of us. But I've had so many emails from people saying, oh, your podcast has been brilliant, and it was really something to look forward to. And I always think that's a bit hysterical, really, because really it's basically just you and me talking.
I know. And do you know what? Maybe we should reveal this, but we've been really brave on this episode in that we've decided we're just going to talk. We're not going to do any edits. So this is just the real us. Chatting.
This is, just us chatting.
Do you know what? Before we did this, we were speaking for 40 minutes before we went, oh, we better press record. So it's quite dangerous, really.
It is very daring for a stage manager, I think. We like to make sure that everything's in order, don't we?
Absolutely.
But I think we kind of decided that we just wanted to tell everybody that listens to this podcast just how amazing it has been to be able to do this with you, and to be able for people to listen in and send us comments, and it's just been an absolute joy. And I certainly myself, when we've made a date to record a podcast, I've always kind of been like, oh great, we get to do that tomorrow, because it's just been a total joy. And I agree with you so much about, we've had such an interesting mix of people come and join us, and and having Gail on just was the highlight, wasn't it, really? Yeah. We can't really do any better than that. We're like that. Okay, great. Thanks. But I just, we're both very enthusiastic exponents of stage management, and we're both really interested in it from, I'm going to say, a slightly more academic side as well. Do you know what I mean? I think I talked to a student the other day who oh gosh, I can't remember where actually she ended up going, but she told me that when she was at school, the thing she was told by her school teachers was, well, why would you go and be a stage manager? Because you're brighter than that. You've got better academics than that. And you're like, and she was like 18, 19. And I was like, oh my God, are we not over that yet? Because I'm really bored to tears of anybody who doesn't think that you have to be smart to be a stage manager, because you have to be so smart. And maybe it's not about essay writing, but do you know what? Neither is the rest of the world, and I think you and I feel the same way about stage management. And so that's also what makes it particularly pleasurable in that sense.
Oh.
So are you doing anything special for New Year's Eve? Because now we're talking and it's, it's miles off of New Year's Eve, my end, but where you are, you're a bit closer in time, aren't you?
Yes. Do you know what? It's 20 to 6. So after this, we've decided we are going to our tea of choice or our dinner of choice. We forego the fancy stuff. We're going to have a buffet because that appeals to everyone. So we've got the cheese board going on. We've got all the nice sort of, Mabby's got her tempura prawns. She's very excited about that. Every possible food that appeals to everyone in the house. We are going to watch. We've got a good movie lined up. We've got a bottle of something chilling in the fridge. And then we'll be on the balcony watching the fireworks. So we're all very excited.
Oh, Lush, you've got fireworks.
Yes. So that'll be good.
I think all fireworks here are cancelled.
Make your own. Come on. Stage management style.
I did see my friends at Dubai Festival City prepping for their fireworks display last night, actually, via the powers of Instagram. So, how marvellous.
Amazing.
Well, I have to say, Jackie George, it's been an absolute pleasure. It certainly brightened my 2020, and I know that together we have brought a smile to quite a lot of other people's 2020 as well. And I think we've really helped unpack some of not the mysteries of stage management, I don't mean that, but just more of the psychology of stage management and actually taking it as a serious discipline that it is. And I think that's really important to me, and I think that's really important to you as well.
Definitely. And I couldn't think of anyone who I'd rather do it with. So, Antonia, I'm wishing you and everyone the happiest of 2021s. In the words of Dareem, as I said to somebody the other day, it can only get better.
And we thank you for listening, and we hope to see you all in 2021. Goodbye.